We are back with several more NHL updates from NHL Free Agent Frenzy. We have confirmation on where Jacob Markstrom's heading. We have several defensemen changing teams, including Kevin Shattenkirk, Mark Borowiecki, and a whole lot more. We'll get you all updated coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have several more contracts to talk about and confirm here from an NHL Free Agent Frenzy. It's been a crazy day. This is our third video of the day, kind of recapping everything that's gone on. There could be more videos, I'm not sure. It kind of depends on what more news we get this evening. But right now, we can confirm that former Canuck goaltender Jacob Markstrom is indeed headed to the Calgary Flames, and he signed a pretty substantial contract, a 6-year deal at $6 million per year, and they did give him a no trade clause as well, so that'll protect him from the Seattle expansion draft. Actually, I believe it's a no move clause, so that's something that the Canucks just were not able to do. They were not able to go that much money and the no move and everything like that. That just was too much for them, so they lost out on their MVP. But you know what? That's good for him. He was kind of a late bloomer, if you will. He was an MVP in Vancouver the last couple of years. Really found his game a little later than a lot of guys do, but he's going to get paid very well in Calgary. He'll team with David Rittich. That'll really solidify the goaltending situation in the Flames organization. They really haven't had a long time, full-fledged starter who's capable of being a star goalie since Mika Kiprusoff. It's been a long time, so they're certainly due. I hope Markstrom can continue his play and certainly well earn that contract, which is going to mean that David Rittich is a guy who could also be available to Seattle as well, because Markstrom will definitely be protected. So that's a massive contract from the Flames, but they got their guy. The Oilers were in on it too. The Canucks obviously had given up earlier and signed Braden Holtby. But I like the deal for Vancouver. I mean, personally, as much as it's sad to see them lose Markstrom, the Holtby contract to me works out quite well. They get a 2-year deal. They don't have to give him a no move clause, so they can protect Demko in the expansion draft. It's a little bit less money. It just gives them more flexibility. And even with that flexibility, they're still going to have a tough time to get some other stuff done. I know as I record this, there's rumblings that they're kind of going back to some of their other players, like Kristanev, for example. Still talking to Tyler Toffoli, although I think the odds of him staying in Vancouver are pretty slim at this point. So we'll see, but Markstrom lands in Calgary, so obviously some more changes coming in Vancouver, and we'll see where the rest of the goalies end up, but that's the only other goaltender information here we have for right now. Now, we also had word that recently bought out forward Alexander Wennberg, formerly of the Columbus Blue Jackets, has signed a 1-year deal with the Florida Panthers. Not a huge surprise, obviously new Panther GM Bill Zito, formerly of the Columbus Blue Jackets, quite familiar with Wennberg, would have seen him when he was at his best and during his best years before he got this contract that was, obviously looked upon as not being overly favorable, but a prime example of a player who kind of peaked early and then didn't live up to their next contract. Hopefully he can get his game back on track. With the changes in Florida, you'd have to think that he could probably be a number 2, number 3 center, depending on what other moves they end up making. But obviously they had traded Vincent Trocheck earlier this year, so he could kind of play in that similar spot in the lineup, but he's probably better suited for third-line duty. So I'm not sure where Florida sees him, but obviously Bill Zito has confidence he can bounce back with a lower salary here and certainly earn that and, certainly play a role for the Panthers moving forward. But they have a lot of players as well that are still question marks on free agency and where they're heading, so difficult to say exactly who all he plays with the Panthers next season. Now, the Predators have signed a pair of veteran defensemen, including former Senators defenseman Mark Borowiecki. He gets a 2-year deal at $2 million per season, so $4 million total. I would assume that the Senators were only offering him a 1-year deal, or maybe it was 2 years at $1 million or something like that. But either way, he definitely got paid more money from Nashville than he would have in Ottawa for sure. Obviously, with the tax situation as well, he'll take home more of that money as well. So that's good for Borowiecki. 2-year contract. Should be able to certainly play third pairing minutes in the Predators organization and certainly give them some strong physical play there on the left side. They also brought in Matt Benning, formerly of the Edmonton Oilers. He gets a short-term contract as well. So a couple of defense pair signings for the Predators. They still have Ben Harper in the organization as well as Jared Tenorti, who could battle for that number 7 spot. But obviously, a lot of the guys that play ahead of them are going to eat up a lot of minutes, including Yossi, Ekholm, Ellis, etc., Dante Fabro. So you know, though they can certainly play a smaller role, but be well worth it, and certainly, you know, add that extra depth that the Nashville Predators were suddenly missing on their blue line. Pittsburgh Penguins have signed a pair of veteran forwards as well. They signed Mark Jankowski, formerly of the Calgary Flames, and they brought back Evan Rodrigues, who had been part of the Maple Leafs organization after that Kasperi-Kapanen trade, but he signs back in Pittsburgh. They both get one-year deals at just over league minimum $700,000. So some Penguins add some extra added depth there, but nothing too crazy. I'm not sure exactly where they fit in the lineup. Probably fourth line at best, possibly be somebody who can go up and down between the NHL and AHL as well. Kevin Shattenkirk gets paid well after a short-term, cheaper contract with Tampa Bay. After getting bought out by the Rangers, he goes to the Anaheim Ducks on a 3-year deal, paying him $3.9 million per season. So obviously he got his championship ring with the Lightning this fall, and now he moves on to the Anaheim Ducks. As we discussed earlier, they did keep Pat Maroon and Luke Schenn, but there's just not enough money for Shattenkirk. They're having a hard time with their RFAs. Like, Tampa's up really hard against the cap. There was just no way for him to stay there, even though there was interest on both sides. So he gets a nice raise to go to the Anaheim Ducks situation, and certainly he'll get a much bigger role, likely play with Cam Fowler. He can certainly have some power play time. Shattenkirk's bounce back. Hopefully he finds his game and can ride things out with Anaheim, because that's not a bad contract for how he's played here. Get a much bigger role than he ever had with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's somewhat of a surprising move as well. The New York Rangers bring in veteran defenseman and player who was just bought out by the Penguins, Jack Johnson, on a one-year, $1 million contract. That was quite surprising. I was really don't understand the deal myself. I'm not sure why they would feel the need to bring Johnson in, but it's a cheap contract. It's short-term, so I guess there's that. But obviously the Rangers want to add some extra depth on defense. He certainly is a character guy who's, you know, well known to be a good teammate. Certainly familiar with some of the Rangers players and brass there, so I understand the familiarity. But anyways, a little bit of a confusing signing, but the Rangers obviously have a lot of younger D back there, and they wanted to add some experience, I guess. But 1 year, $1 million, not too bad risk, but still not sure why they went the route of Johnson based on what else was out there on the market. Derek Grant returns to the Anaheim Ducks. He's had a couple of stints there, but this time he gets a 3-year contract at $1.5 million per season. He's proven to be a pretty steady number 4 center around the NHL for the last number of years. He's bounced around a lot, including multiple trips now to the Ducks organization, but he always seems to do pretty well, good on faceoffs. Nothing flashy or fancy about this player, but Grant's certainly a guy, like I said, who can be a solid bottom 6 guy, play a regular shift, and you know, for what he brings, been around the NHL quite some time now. For $1.5 million, it's certainly a good signing there by the Ducks. So at least he gets a little bit more term this time. So with the amount of times he's bounced around on 1-year deals, it's nice to see a player like that get rewarded. The Washington Capitals also signed veteran defenseman Justin Schultz, formerly of the Pittsburgh Penguins, to a 2-year deal at $4 million per season. This was a surprising move as well. I'm not completely shocked that they signed him, but I am a little bit shocked on what they're paying him. $4 million for Schultz to me seems like kind of risky. It seems like a high-risk contract to me. He has been through a lot of injuries. He's not the same defenseman, which is why he got a lot of heat and criticism in Pittsburgh, and things did not work out there, which is why they let him go instead of trying to re-sign him for less money. I really don't think this is a great move by Washington. They could have signed him as added depth defenseman. He can certainly help on the power play, still has some offense in his stick, but $4 million to me is a little bit rich for Justin Schultz. But obviously with the Washington Capitals, they had lost Radko Gudas earlier. I know they're a different kind of defenseman, but he can play similar type minutes, I guess. Obviously Schultz is more offensive. He'll play behind John Carlson as probably the number 2 defenseman in Washington, would be my guess, but we will see. But certainly a lot of money for a player who's gone through a lot of injuries. The Edmonton Oilers decided to hang on to forward Tyler Ennis. He signs another 1-year, $1 million deal with his hometown team. Ennis was a good fit there. Obviously played in Ottawa for part of last year. Got traded to Edmonton. He's played relatively well everywhere he's been the last few years. He had stops in Toronto as well, Ottawa, now Edmonton. Obviously, ever since he was bought out by the Wild a number of years back, he's kind of been bouncing around on these short-term 1-year deals, but he keeps producing and keeps getting new contracts. He has good speed and certainly fit nicely there with the Oilers, and I think he can play a middle 6 winger role for the Oilers and contribute. So that could very well be a really good bargain contract for Edmonton once again. The Arizona Coyotes have signed Tyler Pitlick to a 2-year deal at $1.75 million. It's really not too much out of the Coyotes organization here today. We could have seen more of an exodus via trade. Of course, they're definitely out on Taylor Hall, we know that much, but Pitlick goes there on a 2-year deal. And the Montreal Canadiens also re-signed restricted free agent defenseman Victor Mete to a 1-year, $700K contract as well. So obviously there's a lot of defensemen in the Habs organization now. difficult to say where everybody's going to fit in. So Mente is going to have a ton of competition to get a regular spot, especially with Romanov coming in, and they got Edmondson that they traded for. So difficult to say where he fits in, but he is under contract at least for another season with Montreal. That's all your latest signings here for today. So like as I mentioned, I want to hear all your thoughts and comments about these new contracts down in the comment section. Obviously not a lot of big money being handed out here as of yet. Markstrom, the only significant contract we've really seen so far of $6 million. Obviously we still have some big names out there. We don't have news yet on Alex Pietrangelo, Torrey Krug. You know, there's a lot of big names out there. Taylor Hall, another one. All kinds of other names. Mike Hoffman, for example. Dodonov out of Florida. There's lots of players out there. You know, Tyson Barrie, another top defenseman. There's lots of conversations happening. So we'll see. We'll have more news here later tonight. And some of these players could very well take their time and sign over the next few days. So we'll see what happens. But if there's more news later on here today, there will be another video updating you on the latest NHL signing. So thank you very much for watching. And I'll catch you next time.